A nonprofit hotline is expanding efforts in suicide prevention by training city workers. To talk about the new partnership with Samaritans are its executive director, Steve Mongeau, and the manager of community education and outreach, Lauren Gablinske. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you for having us here, Chris.
Yes.
I want to start with Steve. Samaritans have been known for quite a while as that last best hope. But why have this job spread out and shared by other parties, especially the city government?
Well, you know, we've been best known, to your point, for our helpline where you can call or text 24/7, but we also do grief support services and support people who have lost someone, a loved one, to suicide. And then with the community education and outreach, what we're able to do is get out in front of people and say, here are some warning signs and risk factors. You can be on the lookout, and maybe you'll identify someone struggling, whether it's in your classroom or some other group that you're affiliated with, where you can have a conversation with them and maybe help them seek some help.
Lauren, at first it would seem strange that somebody working in City Hall or one of the other locations would have a conversation like this, but talk about what's happening these days. How would that come about, maybe?
Well, it's interesting because with my workshops, you never know who people are going to encounter, right? So whether that's speaking to students or whether that's speaking to adults that work in a law firm or work for the city or work with students, you just never know how someone either might have been affected in their own life or who someone might come across. And for me, the importance of having these conversations with the city workers is so that they can expand the knowledge that I give to them to other people. And what I mean by that is, you know, I teach them about risk factors and warning signs. And you never know if they have another employee that's in the office that might be displaying some of these warning signs that they never knew anything about. Or maybe employees that are in other offices that they've known that might be struggling a little bit, and now they know a little bit more about, well, let me think differently of how I'm going to speak to that person rather than what I thought before. And what I mean by that is our befriending practice that I teach all of the employees in every single workshop that I do to just think differently about when we have conversations. And I think that there's a real importance in that education for anyone in life, never mind people who come across others that might be suffering for whatever reason.
We're talking with Lauren Gablinske and Steve Mongeau from Samaritans. Steve, I'm interested in hearing about here too, is this is not just a person who is showing suicidal tendencies or who, you know, God forbid, actually does it, but it's about survivors, relatives, and friends. Talk about their needs.
Right. Well, you know, if you lose a loved one to suicide, it's an extremely complex grieving process. And it's often hard to have conversations with either coworkers or even friends, other people you know, about the topic. There's so much stigma around suicide, and you have a challenge identifying with others about the grief that you're going through, because you have these wild swings of emotion. You know, you're mad, and then you're guilty, and then you're wondering, how could this have happened, and why didn't I know? So the support groups where we get people together and they can share their similar experiences, you know, goes a long, long way. And it really, Chris, just leads to, you know, one of the things we know about suicide prevention, one of the best things that can happen is to just have a conversation. And, you know, preceding a suicide, you can hear a comment that seems as casual as, geez, you know, someone's frustrated and they say, no one would miss me if I was gone. Well, often if you hear something like that, you say, oh, don't be ridiculous, and you just talk. And, you know, we coach people to say, if you hear that comment, stop in your tracks and look them in the eye and say, what did you mean by that? Are you know, thinking of hurting yourself? Are you considering suicide? Make sure you get the topic on the table.
Lauren, what is the best thing to do if you pick up that kind of a warning signal? What do you do with that person?
You address it right away, just like what Steve said. And that's what I teach anyone who's in my audience is, if you hear someone say something like that, I say, see something, say something. Or if you start to notice changes in someone's behavior, if you start to notice that someone's physical appearances are different, have a conversation, and I always say try to have a private conversation with them. Let them know you care about them. So maybe invite them to lunch or go for a walk with them or get a cup of coffee and talk to them and address it and say, you know, I heard you earlier when you said, I don't want to be here anymore, and I want to check in on you, and I want to know, how are you doing? Did you mean when you said that you were feeling suicidal? And if so, what can I do to be here for you? And then most importantly, getting that person help and knowing who can you go to, who else knows about this, further inquiring. That's really what I like to teach people. What are the open-ended questions that we can further inquire about? Where is this person in terms of knowing when do you need to get them help right away, and who can we talk to that will be the best person to keep you safe?
Steve, what about that help? What happens someone, they call up, they need the help? What do you do with them?
Well, if people call our helpline, we provide non-judgmental listening. And again, one of the big factors when someone's struggling is they often don't feel accepted or okay, or everyone's giving them advice. And we're just a listening ear. You know, if someone calls us and says, I want to kill myself tonight, we'll say, well, that's okay you feel that way. Tell me more about that. You know, what's led to these feelings? Would you mind sharing more about what's going on? And it's incredible, Chris, when you can have that conversation, when someone can unload some of their burdens and what's eating them inside, just get it out of their system. And hearing someone tell them, or through a text, letting them know, hey, it's okay you feel this way, but you know, I do want to help you find hope looking ahead. So let's talk about this. Let's you know, keep talking to me. Let me know what's going on.
Or you work with people who do this maybe on a daily basis, nightly basis, perhaps. What about how they feel about helping people? I mean, do they feel eventually sometimes that they learn that maybe they've made a difference?
Well, the people that I speak to, it depends on the audience, but I would say that almost every single workshop that I walk out of after people say, thank you so much for teaching me this. Now I'm thinking about such and such person and I didn't know, and now I'm going to go have a conversation with them. I've never met a group that didn't find it beneficial in some way to then bring it forward to help someone else to feel, okay, now I have the skills so that it doesn't have to feel so scary when someone says to me, I'm having thoughts of suicide, or I don't want to be here anymore, or someone is expressing some type of warning sign, to be able to ask them directly if they are feeling suicidal, and most importantly, get that person help.
Steve, finally, if people either need help or want to give help by going to a workshop or volunteering, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, our 24/7 helpline, Chris, is 1-877-870-HOPE or 4673. And you can dial or text that number 24/7. If you're interested in learning more about Samaritans, you can go to our website, which is SamaritansHope.org. And you can find out more about volunteering. We have 250 to 300 volunteers that answer our helpline and help facilitate our safe place groups, and we can always use more volunteers. It's all about people helping people in our community.
Thank you both very much, Steve Mongeau and Lauren Gablinske from Samaritans. Up ahead, high school sports with Pat Flaherty.